tell, do you see the road? I'm out to my soul into the size whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of, What If Harry Potter Meets High School DxD? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Asian Lion Heart 310 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. A 17-year-old Harry was walking peacefully in the streets of Kuo with his hands in his pockets. He was heading toward Kuo Academy, which was originally an all-girls private school but then it changed and now the school welcomed boys as well. After this decision, the new school building was made to fill more people. The young lord was wearing the school's uniform which consisted of a black blazer with white accents over a white, long-sleeved, button-down shirt with vertical linings, a black ribbon on the collar, matching black pants, and brown dress shoes. Why was he going to Kuo Academy? Easy. Because Muerte thought it was a good opportunity for him to socialize with people of his ages even if deep down Harry was wondering if she was doing this for another reason. Speaking of which, it had been 8 years since he took residence in Japan and so far, he enjoyed the country as he fell in love with its culture and the various other things this country had to offer. The day after they arrived, Muerte started his training and Harry couldn't help but shiver at the reminder as the deity had proven to be a bit creative during their training session. Who in their right mind would let a 9-year-old fight against a freaking chimera? But the raven-haired teen had to admit that she was a really good teacher despite her SDSM tendencies and in return, Muerte had been overjoyed by her MSTR who had proved to be an excellent student, always eager to learn something new. The first thing she taught him was how to speak different languages. Now, thanks to her, the raven-haired teen was fluent in French, Italian, Spanish, German, Japanese, and a bit of Chinese. A part of languages, Muerte had taught him how to use a weapon and at first, she showed him how to use a scythe but despite being kinda good at it, Harry wasn't sure he was much of a scythe user. Instead, he discovered his love for another type of weapon, swords. Muerte was a bit disappointed that her little MSTR wasn't using a scythe but she had to admit swords were nice too. It kinda reminded her of the knights of old and how noble they were for the most part. He grew particularly attached to the sword of Gryffindor, a weapon made of pure silver with its hilt set with egg-sized rubies. Beneath the hilt was engraved the name of Godric Gryffindor, his ancestor one of them. Thanks of his title of Lord Peveril Gryffindor Ravenclaw Slytherin Emery's Lefay which was a mouthful to his opinion, he and Muerte managed to summon the artifacts belonging to the founders of Hogwarts 3 of the 4 where the senile old man, albus too many names Dumbledore resided. To Muerte's disgust, Ravenclaw's diadem and Slytherin's locket were found to be Horcruxes and so the deity claimed more part of Voldemort's soul as hers. Thankfully, the two artifacts were not destroyed and Harry sent them back to his vaults at Gringotts, the one in Japan not in England. Muerte had asked her MSTR if he wanted to change Hogwarts wards as it was his right as heirs of the founders but he refused, stating that it wasn't his problem anymore. There were of course many other things to do like getting rid of his British citizenship to become a Japanese citizen or learning the culture of this new land. Harry, thankfully, had found an old man by the name of Masahiro who taught him all the techniques and other little things he needed to know to be accepted as a citizen of Japan. The raven-haired teen had grew fond of the old. In fact, he liked him as the grandfather he never had. But sadly, 2 years ago, his old sensei died in his sleep. A 15-year-old Harry had assisted at the funeral and he inherited a lot of money from his MSTR as Masahiro didn't have any children. Sometimes, he would use the resurrection stone to speak with his old mentor especially when he wanted help and advices. Muerte had been a great help in comforting Harry during his grief and he saw her as a maternal figure, the one he always wanted to have during his life with those dreadful Dursley. The deity, however, had to give him extra lessons but not in combat but in self-control. Why? Because thanks to his family's abandon and his relatives' abuse, he grew to hate them with a passion and would get angry each time they were mentioned. To prevent him from lashing again, Muerte and the ghost of Masahiro would taught him meditation, which had proven to be a great help from him. Even better, Harry had learned to control his other forms and now he could transform faster than before. Muerte, while understanding that he liked his other forms, had to firmly remind him that there couldn't always use them as he had to remain hidden. Harry had complained about it, but after she explained to him the reason, he agreed wholeheartedly. Muerte told him about the three factions: the fallen angels led by Azazel, the devils led by the Four Mouths, and the angels led by the Seraphs, and about how they made peace afterwards. She also told him about the death of the God of the Bible, which had shocked him, and how the devils could turn a normal human into one of their own to replenish their numbers, which had decreased greatly after the war. A part of this, Harry had also discovered that, thanks to his title of MSTR of Death, he was now powerful enough to stand his ground against Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon or Infinity Dragon, and Great Red the Apocalypse Dragon. Both of them were dragon gods. Apparently, he was also immortal, so now he wasn't really afraid of being killed by some bandits or egocentrics BSTRDS. He had been shocked of his newfound abilities and had been scared of himself for a while. Why? Because power corrupts, as they said. But thankfully, Muerte had explained to him that he was far too kind-hearted to let himself being corrupted, unlike the politicians of the wizarding world, earning an amused snort from the raven-haired teen in response. Not once did he miss his BRTH country even now. Instead, he felt nothing but relief, as England was no more his home, not that he considered it his home in the first place. He swore to himself to never return there as long as those who wronged him were still alive. Even now, years later, Harry still held a strong hatred toward his parents for abandoning him under the pretexts of him going to be jealous of his brother's fame, or of him being a squib, which was apparently false because he could use magic. Seriously, were his parents that stupid? Giving up a child in the world of an old man, really? The only members of his family he couldn't bring himself to hate were his twin brother Jacob and his godfather Sirius. After all, it wasn't Jacob's fault if Harry had been abandoned, so he was off course, while Sirius, he had tried to get custody of him but in vain. Speaking of magic, Harry became really good at it without or with a wand. However, he decided to use the Elder Wand only when he met another wand user, as it wasn't very common in Japan. He also mastered his elemental magic, thanks to Muerte, and found out that he was a prodigy with two elements in particular, fire and shadow. Harry could use the others quite well: air, water, thunder, ice, light, but for some reasons, he was better with those two. For the element of shadow, it was thanks to his MSTR of Death's title and about the fact that he wasn't someone who liked attention. As for the element of fire, it was because of the rage and hatred inside him, which was as strong as a burning fire. But thanks to Muerte, Harry learned how to control the fire inside him and now could use it without any danger for others. Thanks to all the training he received from the primordial deity, Harry's physique had changed a lot. Instead of the malnourished and frail boy he was years ago, he was now muscular, not as much as a bodybuilder but as a swimmer, and taller. In addition, he didn't need to use glasses anymore, partially thanks to his therianthrope side. However, despite all the changes, he was still friendless and alone. Sure, he had met some kids before, but, thanks to his life with the Dursley, he never once went to join them in their games. His only true friend was Hedwig, the White Royal Phoenix, and his familiar. Muerte, despite being a bit saddened by this, had nicknamed him the Lone Lion, and Harry had found the nickname fitting, so he kept it. The deity, of course, secretly wanted to help him to become a normal teen, well, as normal as he could be, at least while making sure to not get caught by one of the factions who will surely try to recruit her MSTR, especially the devils. Muerte wasn't really scared about her MSTR turning into a devil, as the pieces they used to turn a human into one of them would never be absorbed by Harry, as he was already an immortal being. Anyway, seeing that her MSTR was making no effort of trying to befriend people, Muerte had no choice but to force him to by enrolling him in Kuo Academy. Now he was a third-year student in a former all-girls school. Great! Of course, when he heard of this, Harry wasn't really happy because he liked his current life, but of course he was no match against the primordial deity, especially when the Sei deity used her cuteness against him. Now he had no choice but to attend this school. He never attended one physically before as he never wanted to step inside a school. It was easy to guess, the Dursley. After all, before Muerte entered into his life, he had to make himself look stupid so he wouldn't get beaten, and thanks to his aunt's lies, everyone saw him as nothing but a troublemaker and a delinquent. A smirk grew on his face at the memory of the receiving what they rightfully deserved, courtesy of Muerte. Vernon and Petunia were dead, their souls sent into oblivion where they deserved to be. Of course, they had complained saying that it wasn't fair, but Muerte didn't listen as she carelessly crushed their souls. What about Dudley? He had been putted into an orphanage after Marge met a tragic ending. It was the only time the deity decided to go to England. It was not usually her jobs to pick up souls as she had reapers for that, but for her MSTR she would do anything. Muerte each time felt a pang of nostalgia when her blue eyes landed on her MSTR. The cute little one she saved years ago was now a handsome young man. She missed the time he was tiny and cute and when she could hug him whenever she wanted. Well, scratch that, he still loved to be hugged. Of course, despite him being strong and all, he was still her little MSTR and she would stay by his side whenever he wanted. And when she wasn't around, Hedwig took her place in keeping an eye on him. Speaking of the Phoenix, she grew fond of her owner who took great care of her. Harry discovered that she had a strong love for bacon, so he made sure to give her some whenever she was around. Another thing she loved with her owner was how he let her being free. Unlike some wizards who would keep their familiars in cage or in restrained areas, Harry let her go wherever she wanted. The White Royal Phoenix loved her MSTR like a mother would with her chicks. She had been worried when after a training session, her owner came back with a large wound on his left arm, so she cried on it to faster the healing. Later, it was reveled by Muerte that Hedwig's tears merged with his BLD and thanks to this, could heal quicker than a normal human. Since that moment and to Harry's chagrin, his familiar became even more protective of him as she would always make sure to be there when her owner was in training just in case. But after Muerte enrolled him to Koho Academy, Harry had to explain to his familiar that she couldn't come with him, and man, it took hours to convince the White Phoenix that she must stay in the mansion unless he called for her. The primordial deity, who was there during the argument, had then calmed the noble bird who reluctantly agreed to do as they wished. However, she might have accepted the deal, but it didn't mean that she loved it. Back to present, Harry had just reached the school entrance and was now staring at the massive building that was Koho Academy. He had to admit it was impressive, and deep down, he couldn't wait to visit more of this place. He didn't went to school at all as it reminded him too much of his past life with the Dursley, so instead he took correspondence lessons. Thanks to his hard work, he always get out of the exams with good grades, so he wasn't really scared about work. What he was scared of, however, was the factions. So far, he managed to hide his aura from their detections, but for how long? Shaking his head, Harry took a deep breath before making his way through the school's ground. As he walked, he tried to maintain a straight face as he heard comments from the people around him. He wanted to blush at the words coming from the female population. Who is he? Is he a foreigner? Look at those eyes. There's like emeralds. He is so handsome. Do you think he is single? Harry had a hard time trying not to blush at the comments he was receiving from the girls, but then he had to fight himself from getting angry when he heard another set of comments, but this time from the male population. Oh, come on. Not another pretty boy. DxD. Having Kiba is bad enough already, but now there is another one. What the F? He just arrived and every girl's talk about him already. Let's just hope he isn't in our class or we won't get any girlfriends. The raven-haired teen groaned in annoyance as he pressed a hand on his face, shaking his head as he thought to himself, great, just great. As if my current situation wasn't bad enough, I have to deal with this. However, having covered his eyes, he didn't see that a girl was standing before him until he bumped right into her. CRP. Sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going. Are you okay? Harry asked her as he went back on his feet before extending an arm to help her. No worries, I'm perfectly fine, thank you for the concern. Are you the new student? The girl asked him as after she gratefully accepted his help. The one he bumped into was a young bespectacled woman with a slim figure, black hair styled in a short bob cut and violet eyes. She looked to be 5 feet and 5 inches tall in size. Harry had to admit that she was attractive and he had to internally punch himself for not staring at her like a perv. That's might be me, oh, but where are my manners? My name is Peveril Harry, pleasure to make your acquaintance, milady. Harry said respectfully as he kissed her hand. The girl before him, despise her. Apparent surprise, seemed equally pleased by the action if the small blush on her face was any indication. The pleasure is mine, Peveril-san. My name's Shirtori Sona, the student council's president, the dark-haired girl replied back in equal respect with a small bow even if the blush was still present on her face. But then she regained her composure to add in a much serious tone, I'm here to greet you in Kuo Academy and to give you your schedule. It is in my office, follow me. Harry bowed at her to the waist in gratitude before saying calmly, lead the way then, fair lady. Sona blushed again at his words but kept walking away to where her office was supposed to be. Harry, as he followed her, couldn't help but glance around at the place where he would study from now on. Soon we reached a room where they met another young bespectacled woman, but unlike Sona, this girl had long straight black hair that extends all the way down to her knees, with split bangs and light brown eyes. She was equally appealing to look at, but again Harry had to retain himself from staring or else he would be seen as a perv. Who are you? The unknown girl asked with some curiosity after greeting Sona. Peveril Harry, pleasure to make your acquaintance, Harry responded with a small reverence. The girl blushed at the action but then quickly regained her composure to answer back, pleasure to meet you too. My name's Tsubaki Shinra and I'm part of the student council. Harry bowed at Tsubaki respectfully before turning his head to look at Sona when the president of the student council approached him with his schedule in hands. Here you go, Peveril-san, Sona said gently as he handed him his schedule, and he took them with a smile on his face. Please call me Harry, I'm not for honorific titles, Harry responded with a shrug, and the girls glanced at each other with surprise before looking back at the raven-haired boy with a soft smile. Alright then Harry, now you should go, you have classes to attend, Sona inquired gently with a wave of her hand. I'm leaving then, I hope to see you again, miladies, Harry replied back with a bow before leaving the room with the two girls blushing a bit at being called miladies. The raven-haired boy made his way toward where Class 2B had class. When he arrived there, the door was closed, so he took a deep breath before knocking it. He didn't have to wait long when the door opened to reveal the professor. Yes, can I help you? My apologies for interrupted your lesson, but I'm the new student. Oh. Please come in. The teacher stepped aside to let Harry enter the room. The second he was fully inside, all students present were looking at him. Some of the girls whispered excitedly to each other while some of the men were groaning in pure annoyance. Harry recognized some of them as being the pride owner of the comments he heard earlier. The raven-haired boy stood perfectly still as he faced the other students while the professor was speaking. As you can see, class, we have a new student among us. Now I ask you to welcome him as your new classmate. As those words left the teacher's mouth, the entire students greeted him. The female population of the class were more welcoming than the males, honestly. But he didn't cared. Alright, that's enough. Now young man, can you present yourself? The teacher asked Harry, who nodded before looking back at the assistants. Hello everyone. My name's Peveril Harry and it's a pleasure to meet you all. As he said this, the raven-haired boy made a reverence while using his English accent. It instantly caught the attention of many girls because some of them were squealing softly in delight with hearts in their eyes. The men, for their parts, were glaring daggers at him for stealing more attention from the female population. Do you have any questions to ask Mr. Peveril? The teacher asked the students while standing behind the desk. At this, several hands raised in the air and Harry wanted to slap his face because most of them were girls. Where do you come from? Are you a perv? Are you single? Harry sighed deeply at the questions he was asked, but thanks to his acclimacy, managed to keep a straight face as he responded in a kind tone. First of all, I'm from England. Second, no, I'm not a perv, and thirdly, yes, I am single, but I'm not looking for any relationship right now. The last part was quickly said after some of the girls looked at him with hope. After saying this, the girls in question looked a bit disheartened while some of the boys looked relieved that he wasn't interested in having a girlfriend. Alright Mr. Peveril. You'll be sitting next to Issei Hayadu. Issei, please raise your hand so our new student could see you, the teacher inquired one of the student who raised his hand, but it was clear it wasn't with enthusiasm. The guy in question seemed to be of an average height with short spiky brown hair, with 2 short locks of hair behind his head, and light brown eyes. Harry nodded at the teacher before approaching the brown-haired guy. However, he noticed that the girls seemed distressed as he approached Issei and was wondering what was going on, but brushed it aside as he sat down on his chair. Hello, I'm Peveril Harry. Hayadu Issei, welcome in Kuo Academy. Hope we can be friends. The brown-haired boy's reply was genuine and friendly, but for some reason, Harry was a bit wary of him. Something was off about this guy as he felt a strong aura emanating from him. However, Harry managed to hide his discomfort thanks for his natural acclimacy to answer back. I hope so too. Then the two of them looked back at the professor who had restarted her lesson. Harry listened with great interest and would take notes from time to time while Issei was thinking about different things. Seeing his weird face, the raven-haired boy silently used his legitimacy to look at the brown-haired boy's mind only to quickly pull himself away in disgust and horror. How can someone be so perv-ed, he internally asked himself after witnessing lewd thoughts inside his classmate's head. Let's just try to avoid him for a bit, Harry thought as he shook his head to regain his composure to refocus on the current lesson. But, internally, he was wondering how they could have accepted such a perv-ed guy in a school full of girls. Timeline. Harry sighed as he relaxed on the grasses with his back pressed against a tree. The lesson from earlier was really interesting, but it was hard to follow when you heard girls commented about him. He shuddered when he remembered one of the girls eyeing him before saying something about him being 16 inches. He didn't know what she was talking about, but the other girls did because they blushed afterwards. Sighing, he was about to close his eyes to enjoy a peaceful rest when he heard cries of distress coming from nearby, and he rose up a bit to see his classmates Issei being chased by a group of angry girls with some shernai in their hands. Harry watched the scene with amusement but decided to step in when Issei was about to be beaten by the mob of angry girls. Excuse me, he called out for them with a clear of his throat which caught their attention. At the sight of him, some of the girls started blushing while Issei looked relieved. May I ask, why are you assaulting this guy? He asked them with a curious look on his face. We were in the changing room and this perv was peeping at us through a hole, one of the girls, maybe the leader, replied angrily as she glared down at the cowering form of Issei, who gulped loudly in fright before paling drastically when the entire group of girls started to surround him menacingly. However, before anything could happen, a certain raven-haired boy stepped in again. Ladies, please. It's not appropriate for such appealing girls like you to get your hands dirty. Let me take care of him for this time. If he does peep at you again in the future, then he is yours to do whatever you wish. Does that sound fair to you? Harry's words caused the mob to think. Some of the girls were blushing madly at being called appealing by the new student, but they seemed pleased to be treated with such manners. Issei, for his part, was looking at Harry with annoyance and was about to say something when the raven-haired boy shot him a wink, and the brown-haired guy seemed to understand what he was doing. For being such a gentleman, we have decided to let you deal with the perv. Make sure he doesn't try peeping at us again, handsome, the leader of the mob responded to Harry with a sound which strangely looked like a purr before she and the other girls walked away with some still glaring disgustfully at Issei, who gulped in fright as he still laid on the ground. Harry watched them go for a moment before looking back down at his classmate, who was going back on his feet once the mob was out of sight. Thanks for the save, bud. I don't want to think about what would have happened if you didn't came. Issei inquired to the raven-haired boy before him with a sigh. What were you thinking? Peeping at girls? Do you have a dead wish or something? Harry asked him with a glare and a harsh tone. Issei rubbed the back of his head with embarrassment while looking away from his classmate. Harry silently sent a legilimens to look again through his classmate's mind and sighed deeply when he saw that while Issei was ashamed of what he was doing, he will still do it anyway. Pulling himself away from the perv-ed boy's mind, Harry crossed his arms, looking at the brown-haired boy pointedly. If you want me to say I won't do it again, then forget it. Issei hissed sternly when Harry opened his mouth to say something. You do know it's immoral to intrude women's privacy, right? Harry asked him with a raised brow. I know, but I can't help myself. I dream of Bub every night, and one day I will become the HRM king. Issei's answer caused Harry to stare at him with a deadpan expression on his face. His opinion on the guy before him fell drastically after those words. He was an enemy of all women, and it seemed hopeless to make him change his mind. Sighing deeply, Harry then reopened his eyes to look at Issei again. Look, if you want to keep being a perv, then go ahead, I won't stop you, as what you do is not my problem. I did my part by warning you, but it seems it's hopeless, so do whatever you want as long as you don't include me. Issei blinked at Harry's words and was about to say something else when someone called out for him. Issei, over here. Harry looked at where the call came from and saw two guys. The first one had shoulder-length dark hair, thin black eyebrows, and wears rimless squared glasses, while the second was completely bald. It was the latter who called for Issei apparently. I'm coming. The brown-haired teen yelled back to the two before looking back at Harry. Thank you again for saving me. See you. Then he left. Harry shook his head with a sigh before going back toward the exact spot he laid on earlier. But then he stopped in his track when he felt like someone was watching him from somewhere. Turning his head to look at a window, he saw a girl looking at him from there. She was appealing with a voluptuous body which made him blush internally, white skin and blue-green eyes. But what caught his attention were her long crimson-colored hair, which also had some loose bangs covering her forehead and side bangs framing her face. She seemed surprised to see him looking at her but made no move to disappear from his sight. Harry could sense something odd with this girl. A strong and dark aura was floating around her. She must be a devil or a fallen angel, he thought to himself before carefully releasing a bit of his aura. Instantly, the crimson-haired girl disappeared from the window. Sighing, he then stepped away from his previous spot to somewhere more calm while caging his aura again. Unknown to him, the girl in question was one of the two great ladies of Kuo Academy and the heiress of the Grimoires clan, a devil clan. She was Rias Grimoire. She was keeping an eye on Issei Hayadu, who was being chased by angry girls before a raven-haired boy appeared to save him. Rias would be lying to herself if she said he wasn't attractive and had been shocked when he turned around to look at her. She wanted to hide, but his emerald green eyes were so mesmerizing, but then a powerful dark aura shot out of the boy's body, and it was so powerful that she had goosebumps. So she retreated away from the window, her heart beating repeatedly. Are you alright, Bucho? Rias turned her head to look at who had spoke. It was her queen and best friend Akeno Himejima. Her queen was an appealing young woman with a voluptuous figure like her, very long black hair and violet eyes. Her hair was tied in a long ponytail, reaching all the way down to her legs with two strands sticking out from the top and sloping backward, with an orange ribbon keeping it in place. Akeno was also the second two great ladies of Kuo. The two of them were playing checkmate when Rias went to look at the window. I'm fine, it's just, do you know who those kids were? Which ones? A brown-haired boy and a raven-haired one with emerald green eyes. Oh. Both of them are students of class 2B if I recall. The brown-haired boy is Issei Hayadu and the second is a foreigner named Harry Peveril. What about them? Didn't you felt this aura? Akeno blinked at her king's question but then nodded. I did, kinda hard to miss. What about it? It came from Peveril-san. The raven-haired girl blinked in surprise at her king's answer. Are you sure? Do you think he has a sacred gear? Rias shook her head with a sigh before looking back through the window only to see that the guy in question was nowhere in sight. I don't know, tell Kaneko to keep an eye on them, especially on Peveril-san. I will, Bucho, but from what Tsubaki told me, Harry-kun was a normal human and a gentleman at that fufufu. Rias shot her queen an amused look before looking back toward where the raven-haired boy previously was, thinking to herself. She had her eyes on Issei for a while now, and if her suspicions were correct then she would make him a member of her peerage. But then this young man Harry Peveril came and unleashed a strong aura. A grin appeared on her face as she thought about this new mystery. How she loved mysteries. Who are you, Peveril-san? Timeline. Harry was heading back to his home as the night went on. He didn't had a bad day and he was looking forward to go back to Koho Academy tomorrow, but when the raven-haired teen passed near a park when he heard some voices. Harry frowned when he recognized one as his classmate Issei's, but the other one was feminine. Silently, he went toward where it came from, and there sitting on a fountain was Issei Hayadu, a big perv chatting with an attractive young woman with violet eyes and a slender body. In addition, she had long silky black hair running down to her peach. Issei had presented him to her. And if he remembered correctly, her name was Amano Yuma. Harry, while surprised that this perv got a girlfriend, was internally happy for him because maybe thanks to this the brown-haired boy would stop being his fantasies. Smiling, Harry was about to leave when suddenly he felt a strong energy coming from the girl in question, powerful and dark. Not as much as the redheads from earlier, but still noticeable. Frowning, the raven-haired boy turned his head to look back at the two before using his therianthrope senses. His sharp hearing sense twitched when he heard Yuma saying something strange to his classmate. "Say Issei-kun, do you mind doing me a favor to commemorate our first date?" Yuma's question was hiding something as her aura was growing a bit. Harry's eyes narrowed at her. She was definitely up to something. What kind of favor? Could you die please? Harry's eyes widened when he heard this and growled silently as he summoned the sword of Gryffindor, ready to step in, while Issei looked surprised by the unexpected request from his girlfriend as he gave her a blank look for a few seconds. "Sorry Yuma-chan, can you repeat that?" "I said could you die please?" As she answered him, a bright light enveloped the park and Harry had to turn his head away to avoid being blinded by it. When it died out, his green eyes widened when he saw Yuma in another outfit and couldn't help but blush. Her new attire consisted on black, strap-like objects, which looked like leather, around and under her melons, a thong-like piece held around her peach by 3 thin straps, long gloves with small lengths of chains hanging from them, shoulder guard-like objects on her shoulders with 3 large spikes sprouting from her right shoulder, and black thigh-high heel boots. In addition, she seemed taller, had a mature appearance, and her eyes harbored a more evil look in them. To Harry's shock, on her back were 2 black feathered wings. A fallen angel. Harry screamed in his mind as he stared at Yuma in pure shock. He wasn't expecting this at all, and seeing the look on Issei's face, he was as shocked as he was, but the brown-haired boy was also drooling at the almost NDE woman before him. Harry wanted nothing more than to slap him right now, but then focused back on the fallen angel who was creating a pink spear-like weapon in her hand. Although short-lived, playing innocent lovey-dovey with you was fun. I'll take good care of this gift from you, so. Yuma-chan. Please die. Just as those words escaped her lips, Yuma threw the spear toward Issei, who was too shocked to move. However, the moment it was inches away from the brown-haired boy, the pink weapon shattered in 1,000 pieces. Issei gasped in shock when he saw a certain raven-haired teen standing between him and Yuma with a sword in his hand, glaring daggers at the winged woman. "Harry." The green-eyed teen shot him a glance before looking back at a furious-looking fallen angel. "I won't say it twice, get away from him or fight me, fallen angel." Issei was completely speechless. The guy before him looked like a different person. The Harry he knew was kind, patient, polite and friendly, but this one he looked like a warrior ready to fight with a coldness that scared him greatly. Yuma, for her part, seemed furious that someone dared to step in her business and snarled at the raven-haired boy. "Who do you think you are for telling me what to do? You're just a pathetic human." "I may be a pathetic human as you put it, but at least I'm not a bee." Yuma grew angrier and created another spear before tossing it toward Harry with an enraged cry. The raven-haired boy smirked at her as he used the sword of Gryffindor to cut the coming spear in 2, getting another angry cry from the fallen angel. Unknown to them all, someone had been watching them from the shadows before disappearing through a portal to who know where. "Issei, run." Hearing Harry's shout, the brown-haired boy didn't thought twice as he quickly went back on his feet to run away as fast as he could. Yuma, seeing her prey getting away, used her 2 hands to create more spears before tossing them at different directions. Harry grunted as he slashed another of the woman's weapon, but then widened his eyes when he saw one heading toward Issei. "Look out!" Issei turned around to face Harry only to receive Yuma's spear in the gut. Gasping in pain and shock, the brown-haired boy fell on the ground as blood poured out of his wound. Harry stared at his classmate with shock before slowly glaring at Yuma with nothing but anger. Issei might be a perv, but he was a nice guy, and now he was about to die because of her. In his anger, he didn't notice that he released a good portion of his aura, and Yuma found herself being forced on her knees, unable to fight. The fallen angel raised her head to say something but froze in fear when she saw Harry's eyes. They were no more human. Even worse, he was surrounded by shadows, making him look even scarier. You. Yuma shivered at how cold this simple word was said and began to shake in fright as the green-eyed demon approached her, adding more and more pressure on her with his aura. You attacked my friend. Please let me go. I will do anything, but please let me go. Yuma loudly begged the green-eyed young man in front of her as her body was shaking in fright. Never before she had felt a presence so powerful. Even Azazel wasn't as scary. Harry, for his part, stared at the scared fallen angel with a cold expression on his face, his eyes glowing with power. For a moment, nothing happened until the raven-haired boy sighed deeply while reblocking his aura. Yuma, once the pressure was gone, breathed loudly, and once she felt good enough, she quickly backed away from this man with fright. Get out, leave this place. If I ever see you again, I will kill you. Yuma hastily nodded her head, no wanting to anger him more, before spreading her wings to fly away as far as she could from him. Harry stared at her retreating form for a moment with a scowl before rushing toward Issei's body. To his relief, his classmate was still alive, but he was losing a lot of blood from his wound, and some could be seen flowing from the corners of his mouth. Harry. Issei's voice was weak and he was coughing blood every now and then. Yes, it's me, mate. You saved me. Stop talking. Internally, Harry was panicking. He didn't know a thing about healing magic. Sure, he knew some spells, but they weren't strong enough to fully heal this injury. However, his thoughts were quickly interrupted when he suddenly felt a strong energy behind him, and he turned around to see a bright red circle where emerged some people. Harry's eyes narrowed at them as he recognized some of them, the redhead, the blonde guy, and the small white-haired girl especially. The blonde, who he didn't remember the name, was famous at school as the Prince of Ko Academy, but he never got to speak with the guy to have an opinion. He didn't know the name of the petite white-haired girl with golden eyes, but he knew she had been spying on him all day long. Even stranger, she had a faint smell of cat around her. The last girl of the group was unknown to him, but she was gorgeous to look at with her raven hair and her gorgeous body. Shaking his head to get rid of his thoughts, Harry readied his sword just as the blonde boy summoned a sword of his own, ready to fight him back. The redhead seemed surprised to see him but stepped closer only to be blocked by the green-eyed foreigner. What do you want? The redhead blinked at being spoke so coldly but stayed calm as she glanced at the others, who calmed down a bit but still eyed Harry with suspicion. We are here to save Issei-kun, so please back off so I can heal him. It wasn't a request but sounded more like a direct order. Harry's eyes narrowed again as he swung his sword in an intimidating manner. He didn't even step aside but did shot a worried glance at the agonizing Issei still laying on the ground. Why should I believe you? A fallen angel had tried to kill him. How can I be sure to trust him with you? The blonde guy bristled at those words and wanted to say something, but the redhead stopped him with a stern glare before looking back at Harry in an almost pleading face. Please, we just want to help him. Harry stared at them inquisitively, wondering if he should let them taking care of Issei, but seeing only the sincerity in the redhead's eyes, he sighed deeply before stepping aside while still keeping his weapon in hand. The redhead's face brightened at his action before she swiftly approached Issei's body. Harry then slowly made his way toward the brown-haired boy's fallen form, in summoning his sword in the process, before asking worriedly. Will he be okay? He will be once I'm done. Harry noticed the expression on her face and his eyes narrowed again, knowing what she might be about to do. You want to reincarnate him, don't you? The redhead flinched at those words before staring up at him with shock. She wasn't the only one, as the other three seemed just as surprised by his question. How do you dash? Look. I think you have better things to do than chatting with me right now, don't you think? The redhead, who didn't seem to like being spoken this way, bristled in indignation, but when she was about to retort, a groan from Issei caused her to look back at him. Harry watched as she pulled out some chess pawns before putting some on his chest. Strangely, all 8 pawns were absorbed by Issei, and soon enough, the brown-haired boy looked perfectly fine. Seeing this, Harry couldn't retain a sigh of relief as he was happy that Issei was safe before turning his head to look at the girl. Thank you. The redhead glanced at him before nodding with a smile. But then her face turned serious again as she opened her mouth to ask something to him. Before she did, Harry stopped her by raising a hand at her before explaining. Look, you can ask me everything you want later, but right now all I want is enjoy a nice night in my bed. This brawl with the fallen angel and the revival of Issei is enough for one night. The redhead looked a bit disappointed but nodded in understanding. Alright, we will take Issei back to his home. I will send Kiba to pick you and Issei later. Harry firmly nodded at her and was about to leave the scene when the raven-haired beauty he saw earlier said something that froze him dead in his track. I can't wait to meet you properly, cutie fufufu. Coughing in his fist to get rid of his embarrassment, he sent a small glare at the blonde who was looking at him with amusement before walking away as fast as he could, wanting to put as much distance possible between himself and those supernatural beings. As he headed toward his home, he was silently praying that Muerte wouldn't be at home. But it seemed that fate and/or luck wasn't with him that night. Harry Peveril, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, Emery's Lefay. I hope you have a good reason for being this late. Harry winced at Muerte's fierce glare and cursed whatever deities for his lack of chances. She must be really pissed if she used his full name while he was being scowled by the primordial deity. The house elves Mickey and Fanny were cooking dinner or preparing his room for the night. Of all the days she could come, it had to be today. Really? It's not my fault. I had to save a classmate from a fallen angel. Muerte blinked in surprise at the unexpected answer before narrowing her eyes at her MSTR while crossing her arms under her bust in a stern manner. Explain now. Gulping nervously, Harry slowly retailed her the recent events, the redhead's dark aura, the perversity of Issei, the fallen angel's attack, and finally how the same redhead saved Issei by using chess pieces. When he finished speaking, Muerte had her eyes closed as she seemed deep in thought about something. Harry looked a bit worried as the time passed and still no response from the deity when suddenly. You have been reckless. You shouldn't have revealed yourself to this fallen angel, but I'm also at fault here. I should have warned you about Kuo being a devil's territory. Harry listened silently as Muerte spoke those words, even if deep down he was a bit surprised to learn that he just met devils of all things. But then he received a slap at the back of his head from the primordial deity. Ow! Why did you do that? That's for being stupid enough to release your aura in front of a devil. The heiress of the Gremory clan at that. Harry blinked in surprise at the information and stared at the one he saw as a maternal figure with wide eyes in shock. What? The redhead you mentioned is none other than Rias Gremory. She and the heir of Citri clan, Sona, are in charge of Kuo. Wait, Sona? As in Shatorai Sona? The very same. Harry was in total shock of what he just learned and sat on a chair with a look of disbelief on his face. Muerte sighed deeply before approaching her MSTR to put a comforting hand on his shoulder. I know it's a lot to take in and I'm sorry for not telling you this sooner, but what's done is done and I'm proud of you for saving someone in need. Muerte's words comforted him as he shot her a soft smile just as Mickey announced that dinner was ready. The two made their way toward the dining room mostly in silence, but it was quickly broken when Harry opened his mouth to say, "Thank you, Aunt Moo." The primordial deity shot him a warm smile before ruffling his head affectionately. When he was younger, Harry to call her like this, but once he reached 14 he kinda stopped, much to Muerte's chagrin. It had been a long time since you called me like this. I missed it. Of course you did. The two of them shared a laugh as they installed themselves on some chairs before staring at the food prepared by the house elves. It looked delicious and Muerte was drooling at the sight, much to Harry's own amusement before the two of them started to feast happily. But they had to interrupt themselves when, in a burst of flame, appeared Hedwig in all her glory. Hedwig! The white phoenix went straight toward her MSTR before landing on the chair back beside him. Then she affectionately nuzzled his cheek with her beak, earning a pet from her owner who cooed at her. "I'm happy to see you too, girl." The white phoenix's feathers ruffled at those words, and Harry couldn't help but chuckle with amusement, as his familiar was known to be quite prideful and avid of compliments. Just then Hedwig's attention turned away from her MSTR to look at a plate full of bacons. Seeing the glint in her amber eyes, Harry couldn't help himself as a grin grew on his face. "Dig in, you big glutton." Harry's remark caused Hedwig to screech at him in protestation, but the only thing she got in response was a chorus of laugh coming from both her owner and the primordial deity, who found the situation quite comic. A few minutes later, there was nothing left and Muerte was holding her belly with a content look on her face, while Harry seemed equally satisfied by his meal. "Thank you for this divine meal, Mickey." "You too, Fanny." The two house elves bowed respectfully at their MSTR, while Fanny had a pinkish taint on her cheeks. Both of them were enjoying the praises they were receiving from their lord and raised their heads again to respond. "We serve to please you, MSTR Harry." Harry smiled tenderly at them in response. He grew fond of these two and was very lucky to have them around. He watched as the two of them let with a soft pop and picked up a glass to drink some water. But then a devious grin grew on Muerte's face as she glanced at her MSTR before saying in a mischievous tone, "I'm surprised you didn't get any girlfriend yet." Harry's widened in shock at those words, and he chalked on his drink before glaring daggers at the deity, who was now harboring an innocent face, which was kinda cute by the way. "What?" "I'm just curious, from what you told me, there are some girls after you." Harry groaned in annoyance as he slammed his head onto the table under the laughs of Muerte. As if it wasn't enough, Hedwig was sending him an inquisitive look as if she was asking him, "Is that true? It's going to be a long night." Timeline. "Harry. Wait up." Harry sighed as he instantly recognized who had just called him. The moment he entered Ko Academy, he heard that the female population gave him some surnames, the Emerald-Eyed Lord, or the Black King, because of his well-mannered behavior. Harry wanted nothing more than to hide under a rock from the next few years and internally cursed Muerte for enrolling him in this school. Back to present, Harry stopped in his track to turn his head to look at the one who called him. "What can I do for you, Issei? Please tell me you remember Yuma." "I asked my friends, but they didn't remember about her." Harry blinked in shock at the unexpected answer and went deep in thought. What if those devils had something to do with this? It would be logical. "What do you remember from last night?" "I went to a date with Yuma, then a pair of wings appeared from back and tried to kill me with a spear. I remember you saving me and a spear stabbing me, then nothing else." The raven-haired boy nodded at his classmate, who seemed relieved that he wasn't getting a negative answer from him. "So it wasn't a dream?" "No, it wasn't. Thank you for saving me. I owe you a lot, man." "It was nothing really. Now I think we should head to class." Issei nodded, and together they made their way toward the classroom where their teacher was waiting them. The girls didn't seem happy about him being with Issei, but he didn't care, as he was far more interested in the actual lesson. Later in the day, during another classroom, all the girls suddenly started to squeal in unison, and Harry turned his head away from the teacher to see the Prince of Kuo himself entering the classroom. "Hello. Is Harry Peveril and Issei Hayadu here?" "I'm here on behalf of Rias Gremory-senpai." "Then you are. Would you follow me?" Issei instantly went back on his feet while Harry followed him, but slower, as he shot the guy a suspicious glance. The two picked up their bags before following the blonde, Kiba Yuto, as he led them somewhere. However, as they walked, Harry wanted to slap himself when he heard the girls' comments from nearby. "No way. Kiba-kun, Harry-kun, and Hayata the perv. Together? He'll corrupt you, Kiba-kun. You too, Harry-kun. I'll never accept them as a trio. Harry-kun and Kiba-kun alright, but not with him." Kiba led them toward what looked like a 3-story building, with the third one serving as a clock tower. The building was white in color with a black roof and vines creeping up to the second story. "So this at the Occult Research Club?" Issei asked the blonde, who nodded at him in response. Harry, for his part, knew why he had been summoned and mentally prepared himself in case he had to fight. The Prince of Kuo lead them inside and the raven-haired teen had to admit it was interesting. It was a wood-paneled room in a Victorian-style couches and chairs along the walls. One side was set up to be able to be used as a bath and Harry saw a red circle-like drawing and wondered why it was there. In the room, there was also the petite white-haired girl from yesterday sitting on a couch and the raven-haired beauty who winked at Harry when she saw him. The green-eyed teen blushed at this but when he turned his head, he saw Issei looking at the bath with a perved look on his face and looking there he saw that someone was inside. Being a gentleman, Harry instantly turned his head to look away but not before slapping the back of Issei's head. Ow! What was that for? For being a perv. Now you better shut up or I punch you harder. Issei growled at him as he rubbed the back on his head but wisely did what he was told. The brown-haired boy's attention was fixed on his classmate and had not noticed the look the petite girl was sending to Harry, a thankful one. However, when the raven-haired boy looked back at her, she turned her head away from him. Odd, it was at this moment that Rias stepped out of the shower with freshly given clothes. Sorry for making you two wait, I didn't get to shower at your house. Rias's words caused Harry to stare at her with disbelief. Why? Because when she said this, she was looking at Issei. Shrugging, he quickly regained his composure to look at everyone present with a straight face. But it quickly disappeared when the gorgeous dark-haired woman from earlier approached him with a stuck grin. But it seemed that luck was on his side for once because Rias instantly started to speak. Well, everyone's here now. We welcome you both to the Occult Research Club. But the Occult Research Club is a mere facade, nothing more than a hobby. What do you mean? Issei asked her with a confused expression. I'll be frank, we are devils. At those words everyone, except Harry and Issei, revealed black demonic wings in their backs. Harry, unlike Issei, was keeping a straight face as he wasn't very surprised by this. The devils must have noticed his lack of surprise but didn't comment on it. The girl you both knew as Yuma and the black-winged man you saw yesterday were fallen angels. A black-winged man? Yesterday? What are you talking about? Harry said as he interrupted her. The day before he didn't went to school as the headache he got with Muerte and Hedwig kept him in bed. Rias shot him a small glare, not liking being interrupted, but before she could say anything Issei stepped in. I was attacked by another one recently, some guy named Donasiege or something. Harry shot him a deadpan look before sighing deeply while rubbing his head with a hand. But then a smirk grew on his face as he looked back toward the brown-haired guy before saying teasingly. You sure do attract troubles like magnets. Angry girls, fallen angels, what will be next? An enraged devil? Issei shot him a dead glare as around him some of the people present were snickering in amusement, mainly the raven-haired beauty and Rias. The blonde had an amused glint in his eyes while the petite girl had allowed a soft smile on her face. Come on, it's not my fault. No, indeed it is not. They probably sensed a sacred gear inside of you that they believed to be a threat to them, so they did what they did, Rias explained in an attempt to defend the brown-haired boy. What is a sacred gear? Harry asked the redhead with some curiosity. Muerte had mentioned them before, but not once did she explain to him what they were. Sacred gears are weapons created by the God of the Bible to be given to humans to have a chance to survive. They were the weakest out of all the factions. Rias stopped her explanations to let the two people before digesting what they were told, while Issei was wondering what was the factions his comrade already knew of this. Then the redhead opened her mouth to resume when Harry took over. The devils, the fallen angels and the angels are the three Christian factions who at some point were at war with each other. From what I heard, the devil faction suffered a lot and the 4 Satans had been killed. I heard 4 more had been elected to take their places. The devils present were speechless that this foreigner already knew about their history and become either curious or suspicious of him. Issei, for his part, was shocked that Harry knew this, but then he remembered what happened that night when the raven-haired guy fought against Yuma and shivered a bit as he remembered Harry's cold green eyes. How do you know all of this, Peveril-san? Rias asked the raven-haired boy with narrowed eyes. First of all, please call me Harry like I said to Lady Sona and Lady Tsubaki. I'm not one for honorific titles, and second, I have a great teacher. Rias didn't seem satisfied of his answer and was about to say something, but Harry interrupted her, again. And I also know that you, devils, use chess pieces to create more devils to repopulate, the king, the queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights and 8 pawns if my memory is still working correctly, and, I'm 100% sure either you or Yuma herself erased everyone's memory of what happened 2 days ago, am I right? Again new wave of shock came from the devils present, and Issei was looking at his comrade with some admiration. However, the shock quickly turned into suspicion as Kiba silently summoned a sword. Harry, in response, shot him a defiant glare, summoning his own sword. Come on Blondie, I dare you. Kiba growled in anger and was about to accept the challenge when Rias stepped in sternly. Enough. Kiba, stand down. The blonde wanted to object, but the glare he received from the redhead caused him to reluctantly did what he was told. However, it didn't stop him from glaring at the raven-haired teen who still had his weapon in hand just in case. But then Rias turned her head to look at him directly, her face showing nothing but seriousness. Who are you and how do you know about our history? Harry had to give her some credit, she had guts. But he had seen things scarier, that this redhead a sadistic muerte for example, so he wasn't intimidated in the slightest. However, what he didn't like was her bossy personality. Instantly, he unleashed a portion of his aura, the same one he used against Yuma, and the result was expected. Around him, everyone found themselves on their knees except Rias, who was trying her best to fight this unseen force. However, when she raised her head to order him to stop, she froze in shock when she saw his green eyes glowing with power. Shaking her head to regain her composure, Rias glared defiantly at the raven-haired teen while fighting the pressuring force. Smirking, Harry added a bit more pressure on her, and she had no choice but to fell on her knees like everyone else. What he didn't notice was the raven-haired girl's pleasured face as she was rubbing her thighs together, softy in delight. I know who are Rias Gremory, heiress of Gremory clan and high-class devil. And you might be a pure-blood devil, it doesn't give you the right to boss everyone around. Rias was shivering in fear at the coldness of his tone, like everyone present as they all stared at Harry with wide eyes. This foreigner had an aura that could equal if not surpass one of the 4 Maos. The redhead glanced at her queen and blushed when she saw her pleasuring herself. Akeno. Muabucho, let me have my fun. Harry stared at the raven-haired girl with a deadpan expression on his face as a sweat drop fell from his forehead before slapping himself with a hand while releasing everyone from the pressure and in summoning his sword. What did I get myself into this time? He grumbled under his breath as everyone were slowly going back to their feet. Akeno pouted at her fun being cut as her king stared at Harry with shock clear on her face. Issei was equally taken aback by what just happened and couldn't help but wondering what his classmate was, as it was clear he wasn't a devil. What about Kiba and the petite white-haired girl? Let's just say they were on the same line that the others. Sorry about that, usually I have better self-control, Harry said in apology as he rubbed the back of his head with embarrassment. Hearing this, Akeno smirked before latching herself at one of his arm, the left one cuddling it between her expensive melons. Fufufu, I wouldn't mind you doing this again with me later, cutie. He blushed at her words before glancing at Rias, silently asking for an explanation. The redhead, while still shocked by what she happened, unconsciously answered his silent question. She is a SDMSCS. I noticed. Akeno only grinned up at him, and he had to admit she was even more appealing this way. But then, realizing that he had been staring at her, he coughed in his fist before looking back at Rias, ignoring the pouting face of the raven-haired girl and the glare Issei was sending him. Why? Because he had one of the 2 great ladies of Kuo cuddling his arm. Well then I should introduce myself properly. You all know me as Harry Peverell, but my full name is Harry Peverell, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, Emery's Lefay. A bit of a mouthful, I agree. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, ladies and gentlemen. Rias, hearing this, blinked in surprise by the sudden turn of event, but smiled softly as the raven-haired boy before him had spoken with nothing courtesy and politeness. She bowed her head at him before answering in equal courtesy. The pleasure is mine. Would you mind if I call you by your name? Of course not. But please no honorifics, Harry inquired her with an almost pleading, earning a giggle from the girls except the petite white-haired girl. Alright then Harry, can you tell me how do you know about the supernatural? Rias asked him with some curiosity, pleased that he seemed more calm than earlier. If I tell who taught me this you wouldn't believe me, but I can tell you one thing, I mean no harm to you, all I want is to live a peaceful existence here in Japan. Rias nodded in understanding. Being a Japanophile, she could understand perfectly why he would want to stay here, but she was still curious about him. Knowing that he wouldn't say more about who had told him of the supernatural world, she decided to ask him something else but to still gain informations about him. However, before she could say anything, Akeno stepped in. I want to ask Cutie, are you a lord? Because you sure act like one. Harry shot the raven-haired girl an amused/exasperated look before chuckling, I am the Lord of 6 houses. Around him, the devils stared at him with shock. Even Issei was surprised that his classmate, who he assumed was a normal teen, was in reality a lord. Sure, he knew he was English, but DMN it, he didn't expected this. You must be really rich then, fufufu, Akeno asked him with a cute giggle as she hugged his arm tighter while pressing it between her large melons, much to his embarrassment. However, he would be lying to himself if he said he wasn't enjoying it. Hey, he was still a hormonal teen after all. I have enough money to buy the whole Asia and maybe some little islands in the Pacific, so yes, I can say I am. Harry's nonchalant answer caused everyone to gape at him with wide eyes of shock. Even Rias was taken aback by this information despite her being from a wealthy family. However, before anything could happen, Harry found himself being hugged by Akeno with his face being smothered by her melons. His face reddened madly as he tried to pull himself away, but her grip on him was really strong. No one touch him. He is mine. Akeno's words caused his blush to redden even more and tried to protest, but his voice was muffled by her melons. Issei looked at the scene with jealousy and envy as the raven-haired boy was being hugged by Akeno-senpai's gorgeous bub. Rias, however, was staring at the scene with clear amusement, but, remembering the current situation, she then cleared her throat before looking at her queen. Akeno, maybe you should release him. Akeno pouted at her king's request but reluctantly pushed herself away from him. Harry panted loudly to catch his breath, his face redder than a tomato. When his face was normal-colored again, the raven-haired boy shot a glare at Akeno whose only response was a stuck wink. Well Harry, I would like you to Rias began to say to the green-eyed boy before being interrupted by the guy in question. No. I'm sorry. I said no, I don't want to be anyone's puppet. Kiba and the petite white-haired girl bristled in indignation when they heard this and were ready to shout what they had in mind, but were stopped by Rias, who shot them a stern glare before looking back at Harry with an offended look on her pretty face. The Gremory clan doesn't thread its peerage like slaves or minions but as family. Maybe not, but my points still stand, and beside I don't think your pieces would accept me. Oh. And why that? Rias asked him with a challenging grin as she crossed her arms under her rather large bust. Because I'm already an immortal. They all blinked in shock and surprise at those words. They were expecting anything but not this answer. Rias opened her mouth to ask him how he could be an immortal but stopped dead in her track when the raven-haired boy raised a hand to stop her. I'm sorry, but I cannot reveal you such personal informations, I mean we barely met. Rias opened her mouth to object but found herself unable to find a proper answer. He did have a point, a valid one at that. What was she thinking? Why would he share such things with complete strangers? Fair enough, but I still want you as a member of the Occult Research Club but not as a member of my peerage, Rias inquired to the green-eyed boy who frowned at her at the last part. So as what? An ally? A classmate? As an ally, yes, but also hopefully as a friend. Harry was taken aback by the redhead's answer and closed his eyes to go deep in thought. He didn't really know what to do. In one hand, he didn't want anything to do with those devils, but on the other hand, he would get a chance to learn what it's like to have friends even if they were devils. Reopening his eyes, Harry glanced at everyone present. Rias and Akeno were looking at him with a hopeful expression. Kiba was simply staring at him while the petite white-haired girl still had a straightened face. Then there was Issei, a sickening perv but someone with a good heart who was looking at him intently. Harry took a deep breath as he made his decision, silently praying that he wasn't about to make a mistake as he opened his mouth to give them his answer. "Alright, I accept to become a member of your club." At those words, Rias clapped her hands in satisfaction while her queen giggled in pure joy. Kiba allowed a soft smile to appear on his face while the last devil stared at the scene with indifference. Harry, however, shot her a glance before saying in a polite tone, "You know I didn't caught your name, Kitty." The petite white-haired girl flinched at being called Kitty, and was about to answer when Issei beat her to it. "How could you not know her? That's Tuju Kaneko-chan. She is the mascot of Kuo Academy because of her irresistible petite physique and lowly looks." The girl in question, Kaneko, froze at being called petite and punched Issei in the stomach, earning a groan of pain from the brown-haired boy who fell on the ground, holding his belly. "Hate perv," Kaneko muttered with disgust, and Harry shot her an amused glance before looking back down at Issei. "You deserve that, you know." "F you," the brown-haired boy groaned back weakly, which caused a chuckle to escape Harry's throat before the green-eyed boy's attention turned back to Kaneko, who was now standing right in front of him with a serious look on her face. "How do you know I am part cat?" "The smell." Kaneko shot him a deadpan expression at this answer before freezing. Without warning, she approached him again, sniffing him, much to the confusion of the others present. For a moment she did this, but then she backed away from him with an expression of surprise on her face. "You smell like cat too. Are you like me? A Nikomata?" At those words, all devils and Issei, who finally was back on his feet, all stared at Harry with wide eyes. The raven-haired boy cursed under his breath before looking back at them calmly. "You are right, I'm part cat, but I'm not a Hanikomata, was it?" Frowning, Kaneko harbored a confused look, titling her head to the side, which was pretty DMN cute. Rias, herself, was curious of this development and couldn't retain herself to ask, "If you are not a Nikomata, then what are you?" Harry shot them a devious grin before closing his eyes. The devils, especially Kaneko and Rias, thought he was ignoring them and were about to say something when Harry reopened his eyes. They all jumped in surprise when they saw two feline-like green eyes staring at them. Kaneko was unable to say a word as she was mesmerized by them. "Wait for it," Harry inquired them playfully as he stared at his behind. Following his gaze, they gasped in shock when a long cat-like tail was swinging, but in addition, it had a tuft of fur at its tip. Kaneko was shocked by this but was also curious. Is that a lion's tail?" Issei asked Harry with disbelief as he stared at the black tail. "Yes, it is." "Thank you for stating the obvious," the raven-haired boy responded with a toothy grin, and they all noticed that his canines grew a bit sharper. Issei shot him an annoyed glare at the sarcasm but didn't even move from his place. Harry was smirking at him when Akeno suddenly came over to pet his hair, and to his embarrassment, a deep rumble escaped his throat. The raven-haired boy, thanks to his feline's instinct, instantly pressed himself further against Akeno's hand, clearly enjoying the petting, but then he realized what he was doing and quickly pulled himself away with a red face full of embarrassment, much to the amusement of everyone present. Issei, for his part, was laughing loudly, but then he yelped in pain when the source of his amusement slapped the back of his head. "Ow! Why did you do that again?" "Because you were an annoyance and for personal pleasure." Issei shot him a deadpan expression and a glare which caused Harry's grin to widen a bit. Then the green-eyed boy turned away from Issei to look back at Kaneko, who was still looking at him with shock. "You know lions. And cats are felines, and both of us are part felines. Don't you think that make us like cousins?" Harry's question caused the petite white-haired girl to blink in surprise before she went deep in thought. As her mind was away, Harry returned back to be fully human, much to the deception of Akeno, who thought that he was even cuter that way. But then, to everyone's shock, Kaneko took Harry's right hand in hers before leading him toward on the couches, where she forced him, albeit gently, to sit. Then she sat on his knees before picking up a bag of sweets from who know where and eating with her back pressed against his chest. I didn't see this coming," Harry remarked with a chuckle after a moment of silence as he rubbed the back of his head with embarrassment. Is she always like this? No. Akeno, Rias and Kiba responded at the same time with surprise, as it was the first time the petite girl was acting like this with someone. DxD. Stop stealing all the girls. Issei inquired Harry with a glare of jealousy and envy. The raven-haired boy shot him a glare of his own before smirking evilly as an idea went through his mind. Issei instantly grew worried and froze when Harry pointed a finger at him. However, seeing that nothing happened, Issei looked at the raven-haired boy with smugness until he noticed that everyone were trying their best not to laugh as they all looked at him weirdly. What are you looking at? Grinning, Harry used his magic to summon a mirror before presenting it to Issei, who gasped in shock and horror when he saw his reflection. His usual brown-haired were now pink. How? When? Who? Issei asked to himself before slowly turning his head to look at a smirking Harry. Return them to normal. Now. What is the magic word? Please. See. It wasn't so hard, was it? Blushing in embarrassment, Issei growled at Harry, who waved his hand again, returning his classmate's hair back to normal. Rias was now even more curious of Harry, who had just showed him a branch of magic she didn't know about, as she was currently staring at him with stars in her eyes. Akeno was giggling softly at the exchange, but internally felt even more aroused of the handsome green-eyed young man before her and was dreaming of how he would be in bed. Wait, what? Kaneko had allowed a small smile to grace her face as she was kinda amused by the scene, but her main focus was eating her sweets. However, she quickly froze when she felt a hand patting her on the head and slightly turned her head to see that it was Harry himself. Can I get up now, Kaneko-chan? The petite white-haired girl stared at him for a moment before going back to eat her sweets, ignoring the request totally. Harry tried to gently pull her away, but then she gave him the cute kitten eyes, which caused him to reluctantly let her on his knees. DMN it, she was just too cute. But then an idea entered his mind and opened his mouth to say gently. Kaneko-chan. What about this? If you let me get up, I will give you more sweets and head pats. How does that sound to you? The petite white-haired girl perked up at the mention of more sweets and instantly went back on her feet, allowing Harry to get up from the couch. He was about to walk away when Kaneko placed herself in front of him before staring at him instantly. Sighing, the raven-haired boy summoned a large bag of sweets before giving it to Kaneko, whose eyes shined at the sight of it. Here you go, Kaneko-chan. Enjoy. Arigato gozaimasu itoko. Harry blinked in surprise at being called cousin by Kaneko, but shrugged it to pat her head, earning him a purr-like sound coming from her throat. Around them, everyone had different reactions at the scene before their eyes. Rias was watching the exchange with a soft smile, Akeno was cooing at how cute it was, Kiba was smiling albeit softly, and Issei, he was envious of his classmate again. Ignoring the latter, Harry looked away from Kaneko to stare at everyone present and couldn't help but being happy inside. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to have friends after all. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Asian Lion Heart 310 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.